I want to talk about the lens that I'm filming myself with right now, the Sigma Art 50mm f1.4 HSM lens. This is a lens that I've had since early 2019, and it's a lens that I probably will never sell because I adore it. So let's go ahead and start with the image quality. This lens has a very nice, soft, creamy out of focus look to it, especially at f1.4 like we're at right now. It just looks really nice, looks really clean. The Sigma is one of the sharpest lenses that I own. You're not going to be having any issues where with some lenses, especially vintage lenses, where maybe it's really sharp at the center and then you lose a ton of sharpness on the edges. It looks really good throughout the entire frame. Let's go ahead and talk about flaring with this lens. And rather than just talk about it, let me show you. It's definitely, there is flaring, but it's, relatively well controlled. It's definitely a lot better than something like the Helios 44-2. You can see, you've got that little flare there, but it's really not a bad lens when it comes to flare. Now, when it comes to autofocus, make sure that you have this lens on the latest firmware, because old firmware, this lens absolutely sucks at autofocusing. But with the modern firmware, for an interview situation like this, it's going to be fantastic. You're probably not going to be able to notice that much difference between this and a Tamron lens, or even some of the G Masters, things like that. The autofocus is going to be nice and sticky, especially on modern Sony autofocus systems. Now, when it comes to faster moving subjects or low light or things like that, where other lenses can struggle too, this lens definitely struggles, and it tends to jump in its focus rather than doing a smooth transition. It'll kind of like, it's not great. So if that's kind of how you want to use a lens, this might not be quite the right lens for you, or you might need to stop it down a little bit more. But as you can hopefully see in this video, it's doing a fantastic job right now at f1.4 in an interview type setting. So let's go ahead and talk about manual focus with this lens. Manual focus with this lens is not bad. It's got about a 90-degree focus throw, so it's not gonna be as nice as something like a Rokinon for its manual focus, or an actual Cine lens. It's gonna be any of the Sony focus-by-wire lenses, the Tamrons, which are a pain in the butt to manual focus with. This is still a linear motor, so you've still got your good manual focus with it. It just takes a little bit of finesse to learn how much to turn it, and then you're good to go once you're used to it. The actual focus ring itself feels nice and smooth and is really a pleasure to use. Currently, it's $949, so it's not the most expensive, but it's also definitely not a cheap lens. But if you want a 50mm lens that is going to be a workhorse, this is definitely going to be a lens for you. And finally, let's end with the build quality. It's got a lot of metal, feels strong, feels sturdy, good in the hand, feels a lot tougher than something like the Tamron lenses, but it also is significantly a heavier lens than those are. Across the board, I very much enjoy using this lens. For videography, the autofocus is pretty good, the manual focus is good, the image quality, as you can see and have seen in examples throughout this video, is absolutely gorgeous. So I definitely give this lens a big thumbs up. I don't really have any major negatives with this lens. It's just an all-around nice, solid 50mm lens that's going to serve well in pretty much every scenario.